Well, as Michael Hitchens alluded to, the carbon tax proposal sets aside $13 billion to fund renewable energy projects. Now, renewable energy proponents say the money will give the industry the kickstart it needs. But as James Panicki reports, there are concerns that the new schemes will simply build on Australia's legacy of poor investments in clean energy.
Our climate is changing. Our planet is warming. Extreme heat, more bushfires and droughts. The science is clear. We need to put a price on carbon.
It's official, the race to renewables has begun. In just a few words, Prime Minister Julia Gillard changed the landscape of Australian renewable energy.
Today I want to particularly highlight the huge investments in renewable energy that this package brings. Billions of dollars of new resources to help build that clean energy future for Australia.
The government's decision to plough big money into clean energy is a game changer, but opinions divided on whether it's a game the Australian taxpayer should be playing at all.
This finance corporation will effectively support those emerging technologies that just require a little bit more support.
Picking winners is actually by and large very good at picking losers and costing taxpayers a lot of money.
It's a signal from the government that it wants to do something about climate change.
It has actually become unbalanced as a result of some of the political trade-offs that appear to have happened.
The government has set aside $10 billion over 5 years for the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Half of that has been earmarked for renewables. Then there's the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, which will administer $3.2 billion over 9 years. ARENA will be mostly made up of existing research and development programs, but together with the Finance Corporation, it adds up to big changes for the industry.
We believe this finance corporation will play a key role in supporting those technologies that have proven themselves but now need to prove themselves at scale. And I think this finance corporation can play a key role for those technologies. That's things like geothermal, like large-scale solar, like wave and tidal energy. They are proven, they just now need to prove themselves at scale.
The prospect of the government's announcement put a rocket under some renewable energy stocks this month across geothermal, solar and even wave energy shares.
The issue in Australia is that wind power is the lowest cost technology. Now other technologies like solar, whether it's solar PV or what we call solar thermal, are more expensive today than wind, and therefore if we want to put a broader technology mix in, we're going to need to fund that in a different way, and perhaps that's what the Clean Energy Finance Corporation might do.
The fund amounts to a new start for renewable energy, but there are those who say it's a false start.
This is a mishmash which actually principally involved the establishment of slush funds which amount to billions of dollars of tax revenue, the revenue from the carbon tax, being recycled into essentially non-market projects.
Economist Judith Sloan says a government funding body is incompatible with the market-based carbon price framework it will have to operate in.
Now, if these kinds of alternative energies can't stand on their 2 feet, maybe they have 4 feet, without being propped up by the taxpayer, that is not a market solution.
But we believe unless Australia makes the investment now in some of those emerging renewable energy technologies, then we'll face challenges in the future should we need to go beyond the current emissions abatement target and also to deploy a whole range of clean energy technologies.
There's no shortage of renewable energy options in Australia, but many of those still require taxpayer assistance if they're to become viable. The challenge for the new agencies is to decide which forms of technology to support and which forms to toss out into a cold, unprotected marketplace. But one decision has already been made. Carbon capture is a technology which stores emissions from fossil fuel power plants. Even though Treasury modelling assumes carbon capture in Australia's energy future, it's not supported by the Greens and won't be eligible for new funding.
It leads to some concerns on the financial side of things, but in terms of a philosophical step, in terms of a policy step, I think it's a very flawed step because it's essentially saying, well, we're not going to worry too much about that part of the energy equation.
The prospects of carbon storage haven't been helped by the collapse of the large Zerogen project in Queensland late last year. But carbon storage supporters say it has to be part of the mix if Australia wants to meet its emissions targets.
If we're going to tackle this climate change in the best and most appropriate and most cost-effective manner, we've got to have everything in our arsenal there that's actually potentially going to work. Let's not have the government picking winners. Let's not have the Greens picking winners at this time.
It's widely agreed that the government set carbon price of $23 a tonne isn't high enough for the market to sort out which carbon abating method is the most cost-effective, which is why the government established its Renewable Energy Fighting Fund.
But at that level, it's what I call a homeopathic price. It's actually doing very little to change behaviour. It's probably not even a price that will encourage the transfer of electricity generation from coal to gas.
I think when you start putting a serious price on carbon emissions from traditional fossil fuels, then by that very nature people will start switching their investments into renewables. As we start to price the environmental burden, there's no doubt that renewable energy becomes more and more favourable.
But few politicians would be willing to count the cost of a higher carbon price. And with the coalition also advocating direct action to reduce carbon emissions, government involvement in renewable energy may be here to stay.